Just to be clear, this is a true story. In Baltimore City, Maryland, at the Western Hall Burying Ground lies one of the founders of the modern short story thrillers and one of the greatest poets of all time, Edgar Allan Poe. On each January 19th, Poe's birthday, a strange man would visit Poe's grave every year. A gentleman would have 10 seconds of a moment of silence. Sorry. Read his aged copy of Poe's The Raven. Lie a single red rose at the foot of his grave, then leave. He did this constantly every year, exactly 4 p.m., not missing a single year. The people living in the area, or those who claim to have seen this man, describe him as wearing a black overcoat, black slacks, black suit and jacket, white Oxford shirt, black vest, and black tie, a well polished black dress, shoes, and a black top hat. All clothing, according to others, bore the resemblance of the style, tailoring, and fabrics used during the early mid 19th century, which would be the time Poe did a great majority of his work. The man was a concerning male, standing a little over 6 feet, and appeared to weigh no more than 200 pounds. His face was handsome with a well kept, full mustache. Those who watch this man from afar would say that when he travels to and from the burial site, he always commute by foot. He never used any form of transportation. A small crowd of people, he was easy to pick out. Probably like spotting a lit match in the dark room. As he would travel, he would make no eye contact with anyone. He walked a normal pace. You could tell he was in no hurry. He maintained an upright and proper posture. As he walked, he kept the rose and hand level at his stomach. He never stopped to rest. He never stopped for a drink. He never needed to tie his shoe. He just kept walking straight there and straight back, year after year after year. My former neighbor once told me about actually encountering this man. It was last year. She told me that every year for the last 9 years this gentleman would knock on her door 3 times and wait. My neighbor told me that when she would answer the door, the gentleman would ask the same question. In a slight British accent, he would ask, "Hello, would you like the company to pay respects to Edgar Allan Poe, one of the greatest writers of all time?" My neighbor would simply reply by saying, "No thanks, maybe next year." I knew that wasn't true. She barely knew who Edgar Allan Poe was, let alone like reading at all. Wasn't going to even begin consider visiting a dead guy she didn't even know who existed until the first time the man knocked on her door a few years ago. After this occurred, I decided to approach my neighbor's mom, who was living with her at the time. I asked her if she knew anything about this bizarre man that would habitately come knocking at her door every year on the same day. Her answer was confusing to say at the least. During 1960s, she was a she was a teenager. She would see a similar man perform the exact same ritual: knock on someone's door, invite them to accompany them, then proceed to the site and be off. She looked out the window and pointed to an empty lot across the street. Kids would always play there because it was only vacant or relatively open area for kids to play in these city streets. She told me that there was a house that used to stand there. In 1964, she said there was a man who had a wife and 1 son. The gentleman would have come to his house, invite him and his family to the burial grounds. She told me that the gentleman would repeat this for 9 more years. In 1974, on the night of January 19th, the house suddenly caught fire. It was quickly consumed in flames. The house burned down. The, the family who she said about was still inside, but their bodies were never recovered. The same incident occurred in 1984 at another home a few blocks down. Again in 1994, she told me that each house had one thing in common. They were all visited by the strange gentleman. However, she began to tell me that in 1995, another man was seen with this man. He was dressed with another other person from the 90s. People knew him and said after traveling with this gentleman, he disappeared like the gentleman invited him to dinner at his house. It was supposedly an historic district of the city. People claimed to see the two men turn the corner into a vacant lot and simply vanish. Their existent search for the missing man, investigation, and retracing steps, law enforcement called the cold case cold. After all this, a nice dinner with my neighbor and her mother, I was left a little restless. Decided to hop on my laptop and do a little research of my own, specifically about the historic area where that lot is. What I found, I just could not believe. Apparently, in the particular lot in historic Baltimore, there was a record about 10 different shops, corner stores, bakeries throughout the 20th century, even a small factory. Each building that went up in that lot meant the exact same fate, burning down. Each building would catch fire and burn to the ground. The fire would not spread to its neighbors' buildings. They would not even leave any smoke damage or smell like there was a fire that just happened 2 feet away from it. It gets more strange. In a pile of rubble lay a single healthy red rose. No, it couldn't be. After a little more research, I discovered that in the same exact lot, there used to be an apartment building. The apartment burned down during the Great Baltimore Fire, which occurred on February 7, 1904. In the apartment lived a gentleman who would frequently visit Edgar Allan Poe's burial site dressed in all black attire except for his white button-down shirt. His wife and his wife's mother on the first floor, his brother on the second floor, and a family of 4 on the third floor. There have been a couple of news articles about this man, most of which range from the 1980s to the 1901. Next day, I took a trip down to the city library to find these articles. Although the gentleman would frequently visit burial site, it was only on January 19th that he would read The Raven, and people would actually gather around and listen. After he finished, he would place the rose at the foot of the burial site and go home. I was taken aback by everything. I had just read and discovered what I was thinking could not be reality of what was going on. It's just not possible. Was this the same man who visits Poe's site to this very day? Regardless of what I just discovered, I had to inform my neighbor that her life and her mother's life was in potential danger. She thought it was just another one of my improv jokes or skits. I needed to go to arts. I used to go to art school. See, no matter how much I insisted, she wouldn't bite. Well, the next night I came home from my day job that I had since quit. When I came home to the site, I saw too much for me to take in. There, right next to my house, was my neighbor's house, completely engulfed in flames. There was a considerable crowd just watching her house burn. Firefighters relentlessly worked to put the fire out. It continued to burn until the house was nothing but rubble and smoky steamy ash. Firefighter found no bodies amongst the gerbils. They were gone. I was unable to sleep that night. All I could think about was my neighbor. She was a good friend of mine. We graduated from the same high school. She got me familiar with the area. Her mother was the sweetest old woman one could meet. And now they're just gone. Why, I thought, though? There's no way this man could live for so long, if he's even the same person. None of these fires could possibly have been freak accidents. But what would this man want with the man who disappeared? That family used to live across the street, and now my neighbor and her mother. And what about the others that suffered prior to my neighbor's mother's memory? Was he killing these people because they rejected his invitation? But why were all the bodies missing? The memory of these events that occurred last January made me sick to my stomach. So I decided to call in sick today and stay home. It was the 19th. I decided to watch a little television and finally lazed up an appetite to eat. Around 3:15, I made myself a tuna fish sandwich. There was a knock at my door. I heard 3 knocks. I froze like a deer in headlights. I walked toward the door and answered. There he was, with a slight British accent. He asked, "Hello, would you like to accompany me to pay the respects to the Edgar Allan Poe the greatest writers of all time.